Hi, I'm Frank, and this is my recycling presentation. Compost is an all-natural way of making healthy soil, healthy plants, and healthy people, all from garbage. My hope is that after this presentation, you will have a greater understanding of why composting is increasingly important to combat climate change, increase biodiversity, and for the continued survival of humanity. When considering the big picture, we need to understand our common food requirements, how we will meet them in the future, and how composting is a vital part of ensuring future generations will be spared widespread famine and malnutrition. In California, we enjoy relatively easy access to a variety of healthy food. Many regions lack regular nutrition, and this is predicted to worsen. Africa and Asia account for more than 9 out of 10 children with stunting, defined as being too short for one's age, or wasting, children who are dangerously thin, have weakened immunity, and face an increased acute risk of death. Global population is predicted to increase to about 9.7 billion people by 2050. The challenge of sustainably producing sufficient food for the growing global population will not be solved by increases in production because many of the production increases come with greater environmental costs. Increasing agricultural area almost invariably leads to losses of biodiversity. There is currently widespread emphasis on increasing crop yields and reducing waste as the main mechanisms for ensuring global food security. Soil is not an inert growing medium. It's a living and life-giving natural resource, teeming with billions of microbes that are the foundation of an elegant symbiotic ecosystem. Soil health is defined as the continued capacity of soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and humans. Healthy soil gives us clean air and water, bountiful crops and forests, productive grazing lands, diverse wildlife, and beautiful landscapes. Soil does all this by performing 5 essential functions. It helps control where rain, snowmelt, and irrigation water goes. Water flows over the land or into and through the soil. The diversity and productivity of living things depends on soil. The minerals and microbes in soil are responsible for filtering and detoxifying materials, including industrial byproducts. Carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and many other nutrients are stored, transformed, and cycled in the soil. Soil structures provide a medium for plant roots and provide support for human structures. The Dust Bowl of 1930s America was caused in large part by dryland farming, which combined the creation of a hard layer about 4 inches below the surface and a layer of loose soil at the surface. These methods worked in the 19 teens and 20s when the climate was somewhat wetter. When the drought hit in the late 20s, though, the topsoil degradation led to widespread problems, displacing vast numbers of desperate people. Luckily, we have learned a great deal since then. We can measure soil health through a variety of indicators. It can be quantified and measured. For the trained eye, a rough estimate of soil health can be assessed just by observing it, feeling it, and yes, smelling it. A survey of research indicates food loss at about 35% of total food production. We produce billions of pounds of food annually that goes in the trash. The solid bars on the graph on the right show the average daily energy requirement for each global region. We see in the third column, from the right, that in North America, food and animal losses together total more than the average daily energy requirements for any other region on the globe. We waste more food than is needed to feed everyone in either sub-Saharan Africa or Latin America or Southeast Asia. This wasted food primarily ends up in landfills, producing methane as it decomposes. Food waste accounts for half of the material in California landfills. The California Methane Survey, in which aircraft with NASA equipment, surveyed methane emissions in California found 86% of surveyed landfills emitting methane. Only 30 were observed to emit large plumes. However, these 30 were responsible for 40% of the total point source emissions detected during the survey. Compost serves its most important function through the addition of humus and organic matter to the soil. This increases the water and nutrient holding capacity of the soil because of the direct effects of the compost material itself and the indirect effects brought about through the promotion of soil microbial activity and earthworms. This stimulates root growth. An increased root system makes a plant more drought resistant and allows the plant to increase its nutrient uptake. Compost releases nutrients slowly, generally under the same conditions required for plant growth, such that nutrient release is matched with plant uptake. Compost is broken down by bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and a variety of insects and worms. The main components of compost are carbon and nitrogen. Carbon provides both an energy source and the basic building block making up about 50% of the mass of microbial cells. Nitrogen is a crucial component of the proteins, nucleic acids, etc. necessary for cell growth and function. The trace minerals in compost are essential to microbial metabolism. Composting redirects wasted food and plant matter away from the landfills where it would intensify climate change. It returns nutrients to the soil, completing the circular economy of food. It helps soil retain water and plants grow strong root systems. It's a natural process that adds organisms back into the soil, increasing the health of the soil itself. It enhances biodiversity, reduces reliance on chemical fertilizers, and the industrial processes necessary to produce, transport, and administer those chemicals. Evidence of composting dates back to the Neolithic era, the Stone Age. Evidence shows that farmers in what is now Scotland would run a crude stone plow over their compost heaps and sow new plants into the resulting plots. The Greek warrior philosopher Xenophon discussed the use of manure in his work Economicus. He advised farmers to gather weeds and allow them to rot in water to create a manure to, quote, gladden the fields. Cato wrote, "See that you have a large dunghill. Save the manure carefully. Autumn is the time to haul it out. During the autumn, also dig trenches around the olive trees and manure them." George Washington spent significant time experimenting with different formulas for manure compost, for which he built a repository. To maximize the collection, he even built bird perches in the repository so the bird droppings would be added to the manure. Senate Bill 1383 took effect on January 1st of this year. It will reduce organic waste in California's landfills by 75% once fully implemented. Eventually, the resulting reduction in methane emissions should equal the removal of 3 million vehicles off the road. It mandates statewide food waste collection and using the methane emissions as a naturally fueled power generation plant, and creating far more compost. Those who deal with large amounts of food are required to donate 20% of edible but unused food to organizations that help people in need. The law gives local governments 2 ways of complying with the mandate: give its residents a green-colored trash can to fill, or have a company separate the trash. Food and yard waste are the main inputs of compost. To speed the process, they should be cut into small pieces. Paper and cardboard can be composted. That which is glossy or treated with plastic or other inorganic materials should not be added to your compost. Most newspapers are using soy-based ink these days, so they can be composted as well. It's best to soak paper products in water first and then break it up again, speeding up the process. A simple method is just to make a pile of compostable materials in your yard. This method is best suited for people who live on farms or large estates. That excludes most of us. Those with an average backyard can contain their compost in self-made bins. These help contain the compost and keep animals from raiding the contents of it. They can be made from discarded wood pallets or other inexpensive materials to reduce the cost and embedded energy in the compost operation. Compost tumblers make turning the compost pile easy, which can be crucial if you don't have the ability to turn it with a shovel or pitchfork. They do have a size limit and are not the cheapest option. Countertop composters are really only useful to hold food scraps until they can be brought to an outdoor or industrial compost operation. Any receptacle can be used, but many companies are willing to sell you one for under the cost of a dinner at a restaurant. Electrically operated compost machines are available. They will greatly reduce the amount of time needed to make compost. They have a limited amount of space to do the job compared to an outdoor natural operation, but can convert food waste into compost in as little as 24 hours. The nature mill model shown here can also compost pet waste, but not in large quantities. The Vera food recycler pictured here converts a week's worth of food waste into ready-to-use homemade fertilizer within 24 hours. I've made an easy-to-use comparison graph for the different methods of composting. All the prices are taken from cnet.com. The ease of use increases with the number, so 1 is the hardest method and 5 is the easiest. The Franken score is named because I am Frank and I am scoring it. You can see from my summary that different methods will appeal to different people based on their individual circumstances. If you have a large estate and personnel to do the manual labor, make a pile. A countertop container and tumbler will appeal to middle-of-the-road consumers who want to do their part but can't devote a large part of their yard or income to the project. The nature mill would work for small pet owners in the middle to upper middle income brackets, while the Zera is strictly for those who want the latest and greatest and have the disposable income to indulge their passions. Pasadena Department Public Works sells compost bins and operates workshops about composting. lacompost.org maintains a monthly calendar with opportunities around the county for dropping off your compost, learning about composting, and joining a composting community. Compostfoundation.org on a national level engages in outreach, education, advocacy, and networking. Compost Culture is an entirely student-run charity. If you live in South Pasadena or San Marino, they will pick up compostables from your home and take them to the Huntington Botanical Garden for composting. They also operate a booth at the South Pasadena Farmers Market. I'd like to take this opportunity to share 2 quotes from one of the Earth's most precious people, Jane Goodall. How can we ever have believed that it was a good idea to grow our food with poisons? And I like to envision the whole world as a jigsaw puzzle. If you look at the whole picture, it's overwhelming and terrifying. But if you work on your little part of the jigsaw and know that people all over the world are working on their little bits, that's what will give you hope. These are pictures of our composting operation. Filled, the 4 bays contain about 3 tons of compost. We're producing too much for our yard. Our plan is to take the excess compost, put it in compostable bags, and sell it with 100% of the money going to charitable organizations. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope that when you think of the massive volumes of food waste that we generate, you will think of it as an opportunity for renewal and growth, not just trash. These are the sources that I was using for this presentation.